So Maximus and Thaddeus have that secret ingredient that might make it possible to finally rebuild civilization. But maybe that secret ingredient isn't the cold fusion. Welcome to Lindsay's Fallout, where there is no such thing as overthinking this video game franchise. Everybody else is clearly just underthinking. As always, it's best to assume that this channel is going to be a spoiler minefield, but this particular installment is going to be all over Season 2, Episode 6, so if you haven't gotten there yet, toss this one in your watch later. Comment policy is on the screen, and it's been updated, so you might want to pause and read that, and once you're done, kindly exit the vault, because it's time to explore that wasteland. This show is blowing my freaking mind! But before we get into the meat and potatoes, let's do a little plot and prediction housekeeping. My Ghoul serum theory has officially been shot to hell, if you don't know what I'm talking about. I really liked the idea that the Ghoul would never know for sure if the serum is preventing him from going feral, because if he did go feral, he wouldn't have the mental faculties to be like, hey, the serum failed! Sort of like how a synth can never know whether or not they're a synth, because the evidence isn't recoverable unless they're dead. But no, now we have seen, if he doesn't have the serum, he does start to go feral. He knows it, we know it. There's no scam. Butternuts. And we finally got a goddamn super mutant. When I saw that meat bag, I was like, oh, thank God. And we finally got Ron Perlman. We didn't get Marcus. Guys, we didn't get Marcus. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Marcus is a recurring character throughout the Fallout franchise played by Michael Dorn. There were other people who really wanted this mysterious figure to be a talking Deathclaw. I was definitely team super mutant. I was like, it's time for super mutants. And while we didn't get Michael Dorn as Marcus, I think finally seeing Ron Perlman, who has been the primary narration voiceover actor throughout the Fallout games, was a satisfactory alternative. I'm happy. I was really curious how they were gonna do the look of a super mutant. I was really afraid it was gonna look kind of Shrek-like, and what do you know? It looks kind of Shrek-like. But we finally got a super mutant and we finally got Ron Perlman, so count your blessings. It was really nice to see things more from Barb's perspective this week. It's really supporting what I've been saying for a while, that Barb isn't evil. She's just willing to take huge karma hits to protect her family. I don't think she sees it like she's willing to destroy the world to protect her kid. She's looking at everything up close, and the world's gonna end anyway. She's not causing it, she just knows she can't stop it, and if she can't stop it, she's gonna position herself and her family so that they survive it. She thought keeping Cooper in the dark was gonna keep him safe, just like how Hank thought that keeping Lucy in the dark was gonna keep her safe. But those mischievous little scamps keep poking their noses, or in some cases, lack of noses, in business that they shouldn't. Also, I'm intrigued by the question of what House's primary motivation was to make Robbie's mind blowers. He doesn't strike me as a work-for-hire kind of guy. Sure, I'm gonna make these mind control devices, so I can trade them for the cold fusion diode. Thank you to this episode for giving me a word for the MacGuffin, so I don't have to say MacGuffin anymore. The diode. It seems to me like it's more likely that he was making this thing for himself, but it didn't perform adequately to what he wanted to use it for, so he's willing to give it up to Vault-Tec for the diode. We'll see. It was nice to have it confirmed that Wilzig was alive pre-war as well. If there really is such a thing as one primary big bad on this show, it's really starting to look more and more like Enclave, but I do not believe that's what really matters. Because the world didn't end because of who was giving the orders. The world ended because of who was following them. People like Barb. People who feel powerless against much greater forces, who are doing the best they can to protect who they love. Now it's meat and potatoes time. So I'm going to zoom through the themes that I've covered in previous episodes, and then I'm going to talk about how this episode builds on them. Primary concept is humans rely on other humans to survive. Life works best when we love and trust and cooperate. Problem is, you can't have that without vulnerability. You can't open the door to someone's help without also opening a door to someone's potential harm. In the short term, harming people to meet your immediate needs is more of a guarantee for survival because there's no vulnerability necessary. And survival is always going to take precedence because you can't love anybody if you're dead. If you have two people or two entities or two groups that are competing over a resource, if one has moral qualms against doing harm and the other does not, the moral party is shackled in a way that the harmful party is not, and therefore the harmful party will win. Unless there is a more powerful entity that protects moral and peaceful behavior and punishes or restrains harmful behavior. In other words, justice. You can't have justice without leaning on some form of supreme, respected, overarching power, which leads to one of the biggest questions of the series. If any entity is so powerful that you can reliably count on it to provide justice, how did they get that power? Because if you're following my train of thought and doing the math, they are no doubt making ass jerky that you don't have to. Harm protects our rights to live harmlessly. Undoubtedly, we'll learn as we go the full context of why Shady Sands had to be destroyed, but looking at it from this perspective, there is no greater threat to big bad power than a population who has figured out that they don't need it. Once people have figured out, hey, maybe I shouldn't shoot this stranger because I want to steal their Pip-Boy, maybe I should just let them cross the tracks, maybe it's in my long-term best interest to have a lot of allies and friends. No, big bad power needs us to trust it more than we trust each other. And because big bad power is willing to cross moral and ethical lines that Shady Sands Sands is not Shady Sands got destroyed. There were two scenes in particular in this episode that really felt like the show was leaning over to me and being like, hey, you're onto something with this whole human connection thing. This TV show agrees with you, and made me want to go, thank you, TV show. And I imagine it said, you're welcome. Now go keep helping Google and Amazon make money. Wait, what? First, let's talk about the Ghoul and Ron Perlmutant. I got so fucking emotional watching the Ghoul try to hoist himself up off that spike on his own. Dog can't help you now, buddy. That's why you still get the Sole Survivor perk even when you have a dog. It's not the same as having a person. All that lone wolf for the love of the game bullshit is not gonna help you now. Ron Perlmutant straight up says he rescued the Ghoul because they're kin. They have the same enemy, officially declared to be the Enclave, and there's mutual benefit in working together. And the Ghoul is like, no! I'm not a joiner. I'm a lone wolf. I do this by myself. I just want to find my family. And the mutant's like, how's that working out for you, buddy? The hyper-independent lone wolf thing sure didn't pay off when he was impaled on a spike. You're gonna need friends. But the Ghoul still isn't ready to take on that kind of trust and vulnerability, so Ron Perlmutant is like, alright, you're on your own then. You don't get to know where we are. Good luck. Something I want to put a little bookmark in here, because I think it's gonna come up later, is how the mutant makes a big deal out of the fact that they were created by the people who are now calling them abominations and ostracizing them. In the past, I've talked about reactive abuse, how manipulators, bad guys, will provoke you into becoming the enemy. They drive people crazy so that they can treat them like they're crazy, and they do so to give their loyal, obedient, complacent subjects someone else to blame other than them. But for now, let's talk about the Ghoul making friends. The Ghoul's gonna find friends in one of two places. One, as the mutant pointed out, people with shared interests and shared enemies. Other people who have been fucked by the same fuckers who fucked him. Option two, people who are capable of rising above programming, which leads us to our next scene for discussion, Maximus and Thaddius. Maximus and Thaddius have run off with the diode, and now the question is, what are they gonna do with it? Of course, Thaddeus is like, well, you gotta sell it. That is what is done with valuable things. But Maximus is like, we have to give it to the right person. Adorable, but what person? What good person? Yes, he met this one good vault dweller, but Thaddeus points out what I keep saying. She's good because she's never had to be bad. And like we just talked about, she believes in goodness because her right to be harmless was protected by people who do harm. Out in the wasteland, there are no forces to protect goodness. And then Maximus backs up what I said in the last video, that by living in a loving, caring, trusting, connected community, those values are still a part of him. He believes in goodness because he's experienced it before. He feels the ache of its absence and he wants that back, just like the Ghoul feels the ache of the absence of having a family. But here's an undercurrent of this that I think is really exciting. Thaddeus is a covert, good person. A lot of people, Hank types, don't believe in a human's capacity to escape their programming. But programming only determines what you know and what you fear, which means it is no match for bravery and faith. Bravery and faith are a choice. Pardon this funky Deathclaw interruption, here to remind you to like and subscribe. Contrary to popular belief, faith is not just a glorified willful denial of reason. It is perfectly rational and perfectly logical to go, maybe there's more going on than what I currently know. And without it, all your logical, rational brain has access to are the puzzle pieces provided to you by power. Norm's escape from Vault 31 was an act of bravery and faith. He reached escape velocity from all his programming. He saw beauty when he looked at the wasteland for the first time, because he saw possibilities, where an indoctrinated person would only see despair. The unknown is a more rational choice than the devil you know. And Thaddeus reached escape velocity from his own programming when he chose to come out from under that table. He didn't do it to protect his business. He knows damn well that nothing's gonna stop the Brotherhood from mowing down ghouls. That's why he ran off and started his own thing and didn't go back. He knew he was an abomination and that they were gonna kill him. He left Maximus in the power armor and ran off with the fusion core because he knew carrying on Maximus's little charade was gonna get him killed. And if he'd stayed under the table and let Harkness mow down all those kids, he would have dusted himself off and figured out a new scheme. All of his programming, all of his knowledge, all of his fears commanded him to stay under there, and he didn't. He gave that speech skill a whirl. It was worth the risk. He had no way to predict that Maximus was there and that he was going to take Harkness down. This is an example of why faith isn't irrational. This may also give another interesting explanation for why the show made sure that Harkness had a spare set of power armor. Maximus's armor has that iconic Yaogwai scratch right across the insignia. So if Harkness's armor got smashed, and Thaddeus was expected to pass as Harkness, he was gonna need armor that didn't have that scratch across it. But that also means that while Thaddeus was hiding, before he made the decision to jump out in front of those kids, he would have had no idea that Maximus was there. Thaddeus would have recognized the scratched armor, and whatever choice he made would have been in response to that recognition. It wouldn't have been so significant and meaningful that Thaddeus got out from under the table. It would have been calculated instead of brave. Sometimes there is shit going on that might save your ass that you know nothing about right now. It doesn't matter if if it's God, or the universe, or some conscious intentional entity intervening to give you the way out that you didn't expect. The point is you don't know. And if believing that somewhere in the unknown is a solution, is a way out, and if plan A fucking blows, it's worth it to take the swing even if you miss. Thaddeus is a character to watch for sure. And the two of them together, Maximus and Thaddius as a pair, are betting everything on their faith in goodness that they have never seen. Maximus experienced goodness firsthand growing up in Shady Sands. Shady Sands might be gone now, but his faith still remains, and gave his heart wiggle room to make space for Lucy's potential goodness. And Thaddeus's leap of faith allowed him to see goodness in Maximus. If the Ghoul needs friends, people who are capable of escaping their programming and taking a leap of faith on his goodness, these two are a strong bet. Quite frankly, a stronger bet than... oh, Lucy. At the end of my addiction video, I shared with y'all some bad news. If you're starting to recognize that whatever you're dependent on to feel safe isn't actually making you safe, whether it's an ideology, a substance, a trauma bond, you can't make room for letting in anything new until you let that thing go. If Shady Sands still existed, Maximus would bundle up all cozy in Shady Sands, but since it's a crater, he is receptive to the unknown. But Vault 33 is not a crater. Lucy has not reached escape velocity from her programming. She still believes that the Vault is a trustworthy, higher power that can provide justice and protect the peaceful privilege that she is totally adapted to and lost without. And the way that Hank uses this against her is spine-chilling. There's a very common phrase in the English language that is extremely creepy if you stop and think about it, and that phrase is out of control. What are we saying when we say somebody is out of control? That kid's out of control. That crowd is out of control. That neighborhood is out of control. What we're saying is that person, group, or thing is not submitting to control and is therefore unpredictable and a threat. It unabashedly equates obedience and goodness. Shady Sands was most likely destroyed because it was out of control. And when Hank reunites with Lucy, the very first thing he does is test, increment by increment, how under control she is. And when she says she wants to bring him to Vault justice, and she doesn't just want to kill him, he finds the chink in her armor, the way he can wriggle his way back in and get her under control again. I've talked before about how the best manipulators don't overtly tell you what to do. They control the surrounding conditions to corral you in the direction they want you to go in. And that's exactly what Hank does. He acts like he's going along with her wishes. He says, fine, take me to justice. Fine, let's set all these people free. But he did so on his turf. He knew all the variables. He said, fine, let's see what happens if we do things your way. Look at how it turns out. He's a parent. This is a teaching moment. He knew everything that was going to happen would compel her to do things his way, but framed the whole thing to make it look like these disastrous consequences were the result of her choices, not his. He put on a fucking show. What he showed her here was no better than a sham experiment with a biased sample. Freedom didn't exactly have these dire consequences in Shady Sands, did it? It was a very inconvenient success, which is why it had to go. Teaching Lucy a lesson this way was insidious shit, and I wish there was a hell just for these people. On surface level, it always seems like what Hank cares about is that she stays a good person. In episode 1, he talks about his worries about the big bad world changing her, turning her into a different animal altogether, but he believes in her goodness, and she glows with pride. She guards her goodness with everything that she's got, but it was never goodness. It was always loyalty and obedience. And until she connects with an idea of goodness that is not dependent on Vault Tech, she's no use to the good guy team, because she will leave a motherfucker on the ground with those rad scorpion stings. No, I'm not over it. I'll never be over it. Punching the Ghoul through the window, I can forgive that, because she was really fighting for herself, her autonomy, her choices. She wasn't just on a high horse. It's different. Or I guess I should say on a high dinosaur. But keep in mind, I said until she connects with this idea of goodness. Not that she never will. I have faith that she will. But it will sure as shit help if she reconnects with goodness that thrives outside of Vault Tech control. And the dying, flickering light of goodness that still burns in the wasteland is in Maximus. I'll leave y'all with this. A man by the name of, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that,
Kazimierz Dombrowski.
Thanks, unholy robot.
You're welcome. Unholy but precise.
Anyway, he studied the impact World War I and World War II had on people, specifically wanting to know why some souls collapse under the weight of the devastation, while others thrive and become leaders and rebuilders. Now, a lot went into it, but the bulk of his research can't be boiled down to one simple trait, and you may be surprised what it is. Sensitivity. The terminology used in the research is overexcitabilities, but that's defined as heightened responsiveness of the nervous system. Numbness is not a strength, it is an impairment. Feelings are data. Pain isn't there to tell us what to run away from, it's there to tell us what to pay attention to. If a person causes you pain, you can run away, but if your foot causes you pain, you're not supposed to cut your foot off. We're supposed to be sad and angry until the conditions that are making us sad and angry change. And the people who learn to feel that pain, learn how to carry it, those are the people that can change the world, not the people who anesthetize it. We are not moved to respond to pain that we don't allow ourselves to feel. This is why I'm constantly telling y'all that if you have to take a karma hit, if you have to make a move that's in violation of your values, for your survival or for the sake of your family, do so, but for the love of God, feel bad about it. Guys like Hank, guys like Mr. House, believe that feelings get in the way of doing the hard stuff that has to be done. But ask yourself, if you have to cut off your compassion to do the right thing, how could it possibly be the right thing? If you cut off those signals, then how could you possibly know when you've gone too far? Maximus refused to submit to Knight Titus's bullshit and ended up meeting Lucy as a result because he still feels. Maximus saved those ghoul children and stood up to Quintus with tears in his eyes because he still feels. And the ghoul ended up on a spike and getting kicked out by his new super mutant buddy because he refuses to feel for anybody but his family. It's almost like he's cutting off his nose to spite his face. Nailed it! I've been dying to say that for so long. Anyway, the point is, numbness doesn't make you stronger. It gives the people who hurt you a free fucking pass. Some smartass in the comments is gonna be like, well, there are some times when you need to amputate a foot. Yeah, well, cross-reference how many situations where you need to amputate that foot with when that foot is numb, not in pain. Boom. If the foot still has feelings, it is fighting for its chance. And if you have feelings, you are still fighting for your chance at community, connection, and love. And it is worth noting that this episode has established that Barbara is not numb. She is feeling her karma hits, and it's gonna be interesting to see where that goes. Remember, kids, war never changes, but love changes everything. Community section, which is gonna be short this time because I'm tired. But I gotta let y'all know that I'm doing my Saturday stream again, come! Time is on the screen. Hopefully I'll remember to put it in the description as well. If something comes up a lot in the comments, that's where we'll talk about it. I hope you come. Saturday streams are becoming my favorite part of my week. I love talking to all of you. So like and subscribe, and I will see you on Saturday.
If you have to go out, take a gun and a lamp. Everybody knows there's a devil in camp. Ow!